Okay, why don't we get started? I am going to welcome Andrew Klein.
Hello, Andrew Klein. I'm with Backbone PLM. We are a product lifecycle management solution, and what we do is help brands create their products easier, faster, together.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
All right, I'm Dan Pankratz with Exchange Collective. We're a software platform for retailers and brands to be able to offer consumers the endless aisle solution within the brick and mortar retail space.
Excellent. Next, Heath Wells.
Hi, I'm the Aussie out of the group. My name's Heath. I'm the co-founder of NuORDER. NuORDER is a B2B e-commerce platform. We're the leader in the market. We have 850 brands, 350,000 retailers. We just pushed past $6.5 billion through the platform. We've raised about 30 million and have about 80 people working for us. So been doing it a little while, but that's us.
Fantastic.
Hi, my name is Kent Mori. I'm the CEO of Maderight. Maderight is an apparel manufacturer that uses technology to get products to market faster, making the whole production process seamless.
Hi, I'm Tim Morse. I'm the co-founder and president of Rich or Poor. We are a California lifestyle brand that's focused on delivering high quality, well-designed basics, so t-shirts, socks, boxers, sweats, so on and so forth. We use technology extensively, both at the wholesale level and to drive awareness and conversion online.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Now, Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit more detail about Backbone and how these types of future disruptions within our space currently is going to have an impact, and how
Absolutely.
Backbone can help.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've seen an insurgence of technology in this space. It's definitely been infiltrating other sectors of business, but fashion was really one of those things that was, traditionally really archaic in, just by nature. It's hand sketching. It's even AI files take very long to create. Bill of materials being created and sent off to factories take very long time. So what Backbone does is it's a central repository, so brands can do all of that in one solution, so that they can go ahead and take a concept, go ahead and call out all the construction details, specify all the materials. But what's great is that other internal business partners have access to that data more dynamically than ever before. So as changes occur throughout the development process and iteration process, as samples come in, they're verified, and production can really see, there is a component that changed, or something got updated, or a lead time doesn't agree with the product launch. So all of these moving parts become really tough to manage, especially across brands with tremendous SKU volume. So Backbone really helps to manage that brain damage around that process.
Fantastic. Now, I do have a couple questions for you, Andrew, and I'm sure you've answered them in some bits and pieces. But what technology specifically do you see as market disruptors?
It's a great question. Being a tech guy, I love to see all of the awesome technologies infiltrating the space. Like Shopify was here yesterday. Harley is actually a high school friend. He's the COO. So I think that's been incredible for brands to be able to, create products and then immediately sell them in a very seamless way. You have companies like Flexport. So I don't know if you've ever dealt with logistics, but it's a nightmare. So having a company like Flexport that said, hey, you know what, we're going to tackle this problem. And this is a big problem. And what that does is it allows you to find reliable logistic people, freight forwarders, transparency around pricing, all the EDI that happens, which is electronic data interchange. So being able to see your goods, and get those checkoffs to see when they made it on the truck, the boat, when they've hit the port, and then a slew of other, awesome technologies like Heath. He has an incredible tool, which is, making brands get their goods, their line sheets. That's kind of almost like the bloodline, because if you can't communicate your products to your clients in a very dynamic way, it kind of takes away from all of the hard work that went into even creating those.
Fantastic. Thank you for answering that. I've got another one for you.
Yeah.
Speed to market is a major competitive advantage for the large vertically integrated brands. What are some things that smaller brands can do to remain competitive?
Great question. listen, there's the fast fashion business model. I mean, to me, I think that, it's really harmful to our environment. We had a speaker who touched on sustainability. I'm not going to get into all that, but I can tell you that the fast fashion model is, from our environment to us as a human species, it's actually negatively impacting us. But things that brands can do, and I'll get a little specific, especially as you're creating your products, is really analyze the line in the beginning. Try to identify things that are going to be problematic developments, whether it's a material, an embroidery, a specific component, something that you're like, hey, I know historically these things give us trouble. Get those developments out the door earlier. So really kick off that development process earlier. What that allows you to do is kind of think through those things and come up with corrective actions as those issues come up. I see too many brands who wait for this climatic point to say, hey, we're going to send our tech packs out. And along with that, now all of a sudden, the factory's breaking down those tech packs, they're seeing what materials are needed, now they're reaching out to suppliers, and then the issues crop up. That infrastructure is kind of, it's age old, but it's not the best one. We've seen brands kind of really empower themselves using Backbone to be able to identify those things, get those developments out, and kick off that development cycle earlier. On top of that, there's gridlocking in the approval process. With more visibility into what's being approved, you can allow more collaborators within a design team to make those approvals. And I think that's really awesome because personally, and I'll say this in hush, is I've worked on teams where all the developments went into one key man, and that key man or woman had to make all of those decisions around what was being approved from a material standpoint, from a dye, from any development that you guys are doing. And that really if that person's out, there's no proxy, things just really get pushed back, and that has a compound impact on the launch date.
Thank you very much for sharing that insight, Andrew. Greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Dan, you are the co-founder of Exchange Collective. We would all love to know a little bit more about what you do and how you can help the industry.
So Exchange Collective, we make retail fun again. What we do is we actually allow the independent retailers, because retail is getting a little stressful, but we're trying to make it fun for the brands and the retailers. Basically what we do is we allow a retail shop, no matter what size, have an omni-channel solution. So a customer walking into the store looking for a particular item, if it's out of stock, we directly work with the brands with a mobile solution in store where the sales associate can basically sell that item, have it drop shipped to the customer's house. We allow the brands to then work with their retailers to curate better product mix for in-store, merchandising, so that the retailer is comfortable with, hey, this is what I have in my store. I have the technology and ability to sell to my customers. So we're trying to make the special order, the omni-channel, and endless aisle solution a little bit easier.
Fantastic, Thank you. So Dan, how is data and analytics playing a vital role in the current retail space right now?
Well, we work with a lot of small retailers, and it's very important for them, but they don't use it, and that's the biggest thing. Like with this disruption in our space, I think the biggest disruption is with all this technology going on, the small guy especially is having a hard time figuring out how to get data out of their point of sale system, out of anything they're using. And so I think the biggest disruption is these small retailers don't have the ability to do it. And it's really important, and it's important for the brands because there's a lot of data out there that we don't have. Like, what did the customer want when they came in the store and walked out with nothing? Or did they actually end up making that purchase? And so there's different technologies, and again, we've got B2Bs and we got direct-to-consumer and all this stuff going on, and I think if the retailers and the brands are starting to embrace the proper technology to get the data out for themselves, they'll be able to offer their customers more confidence coming back into their store.
That's right, and as we all know, having that data is really powerful in that we get to really understand and learn about whatever our nuclear client is, and being able to address whatever their needs are next time they walk into our space. I have another question. How should a brand today buy technology to support an omni-channel business?
How should brands buy technology for omni-channel solutions? With money, first of all. No. They should buy it based on what they're going to use. And again, I said it just a minute ago, there's so many rad technologies out there for brands and and even retailers for omni-channel out there, but it's got to be one that they're going to use and implement all the way down to the lowest level of their staff. I mean, what we see is a shop owner that sees what we're doing and they're like super excited about it. It works for them. It works for their space. It's the right size. It's the right interface and all this stuff. But yet they're not going to implement it all the way down to their sales staff. So the omni-channel solution, because there's a handful of them out there, it's got to be the one that's scalable for their business. They don't need to go buy the most expensive, tens of thousands of dollars. They may find that something really small and easy can work for them. So it's really analyzing their own business and where they're at in the marketplace, not worrying about what the Joneses are doing with their technology, but going, hey, this is the one that works for me. I'm able to get data out of it. I'm able to get this solution working. This works for my customer. My sales staff is using it. So it's got to be something that is scalable for their business. So it's got to be the right one for them. Again, like there's so many rad things out there that it's hard. So, take your time. And then once you're committed with one, it's not looking over your shoulder going, wait a minute, maybe I should be using this one, maybe I should. So it's committing to the one that you actually go with. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, for sharing
no
Exchange
worries.
Collective with us. And now we have Heath Wells, who's the founder of NuORDER. We'd love to know a little bit more about what you do in your organization and how you can help.
Sure. So I kind of gave everyone a little bit of information, but to kind of extend on that, what we do is so simple. We remove pen, paper, and God forbid that fax machine from the seller and the buying process. So NuORDER is e-commerce for wholesale. It sounds really simple, and that's because it is. And so what we do is we come in here and we replace the printed catalog, we replace the PO books, etc. And essentially we provide an e-commerce experience for retailers who are buying from brands. So although the concept's simple, changing an industry is hard. And I think that's more the challenge. People get their head around it. It's more convincing people to make a change.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, I do have a couple of questions for you as well. How do you see technology as shaping the future of fashion?
Look, this is really interesting to me because when we look at apparel, we started this in 2012, and I give the same speech over and over and over and over. And I just mentioned it before, it's change is hard, but I think what needs to happen is that we all need to acknowledge that change is needed. Amazon is becoming so big and such an important part. I think in Q4 they accounted for over 50% of all Q4 online sales. And so if a retailer doesn't adjust, if brands don't adapt, what's the future going to look like? And so talking about what that future looks like, what I see is a future where you're going to walk into a retail store and you're going to have endless aisle capabilities. You're going to be able to buy, hey, I want that shoe, but I want it in black. Okay, no worries, I'll have it shipped straight to your door. And blending online and offline. And we've been talking about these things for how many years, but still nothing's changing. But I think we're getting to a point where Amazon is going to force us to change. And so I think, like all things in humankind, we kind of wait till the very last moment, and I think we're getting to that. So that's, I think, omni-channel, how people are going to shop in a retail store is really important. The next part, I'm going to talk about trade shows. We're here to a trade show. So I just launched an online trade show. And you would sit here and say, well, hang on, why is he here? Is he competing? The reality is I'm not. I think that trade shows are for a few days a year. You're going to come here, you're going to shake hands, you're going to kiss babies. That's the typical thing. But outside of that, the other 360 days, there needs to be an online trade show. And that's what we launched recently. And what I think is going to happen is that you're going to have a buyer in Italy buying brands from America just as easily as they can, from their local supplier. So I think what's going to happen is through technology, you're going to be able to break down borders, and a rep's job is just not going to be in the local region, it's going to be a global region. And just to kind of put a similarity to that, look at what Netflix did to Blockbuster. Blockbuster was, okay, we had to have you had to go there and rent a video, and now the thought of that is just ludicrous, right? I think the same thing is going to happen in this space here, is that the idea that you do all of your business at a show is going to be somewhat ludicrous as well. I think the business is going to move to 365 days a year, where retailers are buying far more on demand, And I think it's going to move from just being these small pockets in Windows.
Thank you. That really sounds like really exciting insight. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing most wholesale native brands today?
Change. It doesn't matter how many times I bang people over the head with why this is better. It requires change. And so if I'm a wholesaler, I can prove to you that you will sell 20% more on my platform. But it's just like saying if you buy a gym membership, you're going to lose weight. We all know it, but the fact is we don't act on it. And so the biggest thing that needs to happen is that if you run a brand, commit to technology in enhancing your business. Because the reality is the benefit you will see from it, you're going to be able to build an edge over your competition, you're going to be able to cover a wider market. And so change is the biggest barrier, and that's human nature, and we've just got to keep on plugging away. But the reality is there will be a tipping point where me talking about pen and paper will be a thing that we never thought we'd do. So,
thank you, Heath, for sharing NuORDER with us. Now we've got Kent Mori, co-founder and CEO of Maderight. If you can share what Maderight is all about and what you're here to do for the market.
Definitely. So Maderight is just trying to make manufacturing suck a lot less. If anybody's ever had to work with a manufacturer, it is terrible. And so essentially what we've done is we've really put all of this online to a platform where you can easily track the status of your prototypes. You can track the status of your production. You know when your prototypes are going to get delivered. It's all going to be QC'd. If anybody's worked with a manufacturer, it's like pulling teeth to get information out. And what we do is we're really pushing information to you so you can actively manage. The truth with manufacturing is that you're never going to get a perfect manufacturing run. It's impossible because there's too many people involved. But with us, it's all about making sure that we can identify those problems early, work through it, so you actually get the product that you can actually sell.
Fantastic. Now, where do you see manufacturing heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I see two dominant trends in manufacturing. One of them is kind of the tried and true optimization for margin. As much as everyone says that that's going to go away, that's not going to go away. That's definitely here to stay. And I believe that it has to be a big part of a brand strategy. It's good to do things like your basics, your year-long staples, as a way to optimize for margin, because it's going to end up making the majority of your revenue. The second trend, though, is essentially an optimization for agility. And this is the stuff that gets everyone a lot more excited. Optimization for agility for us always means, hey, we're going to get you products faster and at smaller quantities. And to really to essentially make that happen, though, is you really have to change how you think about design, because the reason why someone like a Zara can get product to market so fast is because they're pre-buying all their fabric, and then they're saying, hey, designers, you have to design within this fabric. And so if the trend essentially to get your product to market faster, you have to fundamentally change the way that you're designing. I think the long term, we will see a lot more trends towards automation. I think we'll also see a lot more trends towards nearshoring. And I also think we're also going to see some really exciting trends towards mass customization and last mile customizations as well.
Fantastic. What are the current challenges around sourcing, and how can technology improve that?
Yeah, so the biggest issue with sourcing is that it's extremely fragmented. There are literally tens of thousands of suppliers. You can go to Alibaba. It's a disastrous way to do manufacturing, but you can essentially go there and you can see that there's so many people, but no one is really talking to each other. And just like pretty much everybody on this panel, the solution is essentially to make it all that information, or at least a subsegment of that information, accessible on a platform where you can easily design, you can easily pull fabrics to essentially make your products a lot faster and better.
Thank you very much. That was Kent Mori, co-founder, CEO of Maderight. Now we've got Tim Morse, who is the co-founder, Richer Poorer. We'd love to know more about what you do and how you can help us.
Sure. So Richer Poorer, we launched in 2010. We were coming out of the economic hangover. I was working in Silicon Valley. And I was always interested in socks as kind of something that had replaced the tie and kept things kind of interesting in the workplace. And so I grew up in Laguna Beach. It was, ground zero for a lot of action sports companies down there. So I grew up in that culture, and I wanted to kind of take my experience for the last 10 years in working with technology and then apply that to some of the passion that I had around working in the apparel industry. So, I was accustomed to building audiences online. I knew how to market online. I didn't know how to produce socks. And so I wanted to figure out if there was a way that we could, develop a brand exclusively around a singular item like a pair of socks. We launched in 2010, as I mentioned. We've since evolved into being what I would essentially call an apparel brand. About 50% of our revenue comes from apparel now. We run into tremendous problems that everybody on this panel talks about, so I'm eager to actually have some sidebar conversations to figure out if you can help me solve some of that stuff. We work with NuORDER. It's like our lifeline to the business. And so, now we work with about 800 wholesalers across the U.S., but we also are very committed to being a digitally first brand and figuring out, and really the belief is it's not a zero-sum conversation. We need to have a healthy wholesale ecosystem as well as a healthy online ecosystem, and so that's where we're, distinctly focused.
Fantastic. Now, I originally addressed this question to Heath, but I'd really like to hear your perspective on it, Tim. What is the biggest challenge facing most wholesale native brands today?
So that's a big one. I think a lot of brands here that we see at the trade show are wholesale native brands, and I think that the challenge that a lot of these brands will have is really kind of crossing the chasm and figuring out, how do I sell online? How do we use speed and data and be reactionary to what the customer is telling us online and apply that to both our product development side for the wholesale channel as well as then the production side. And I think wholesale brands just aren't accustomed to that and working at that speed. And so you have these insurgent brands, these digitally native brands that are coming online and we're built for that. We're built for speed. And so I think that's a tremendous opportunity where you have brands that have historically been wholesale. They have deep roots. They've developed an emotional connection with the consumer at the wholesale level, and now they need to cross that chasm and they need to figure out how to do the same online. I think it's arguably I think it's hard to build a real strong emotional connection with a digitally native brand, and so I think that is the opportunity that wholesale brands have. But I think it presents challenges for them from a production perspective. Do they have the systems, whether it's the application stack, ERP systems like NuORDER? Do they have, BI, business intelligence tools to be able to do something with that information? And most of them don't. So I think where we are focused right now is how do we set up that application stack so that we can start to drive and make decisions based on data and then also apply that to the wholesale channel. One of the things that we do is we launch all of our products online first now before we actually take it to the wholesale channel, so that when we come to trade shows like that, I have at least 3 months of data to inform retailers to say, hey, listen, you're in Chicago. I can tell you exactly what people in Chicago are buying. They're buying all black long sleeve tees. Stay away from the gray ones, stay away from the navy ones, and stick to the, and I think that is part of my job. And as brands that think this way is we need to be part of the solution at retail and provide that sort of data transparency and that information, because I think that it just grows the pond.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, Tim, will partnering with Amazon kill your brand, or is it a big opportunity?
Well, I mean, it's a loaded question, but I think Heath mentioned over 50% of all online commerce during the holiday was done on Amazon. I actually heard numbers maybe north of that, closer to 60, 65%. So what that tells you is that if that's in fact the case and you're not there, you're losing out on 65% of all those dollars. So you have all these other brands that are not on Amazon that are fighting over 35% of that revenue. For us, we made a decision to actually to work with Amazon, and we do it very prescriptively and very thoughtfully. I think if you actually manage the channel the right way, like you would manage your D2C channel as well as your wholesale channel, I think it could be incredibly effective from user acquisition perspective. It can be incredibly. There's a credible opportunity, obviously, from revenue as well as just being able to kind of inform, your product and design decisions, because there's so much velocity and volume being done on Amazon right now that if you're not there, you're losing out on revenue, you're losing out on information, and ultimately that could be fairly detrimental. So I think you have to do it. You actually have to position your product and brand the right way. Like, to give you an example, we only sell bundled product on Amazon. You can't find any of the product on Amazon, any of our other channels. In our wholesale channel, you're not going to find product that we sell on Amazon. So, you just have to be thoughtful about it. But I think it's a tremendous opportunity for brands.
Thank you very much. That was Tim Morse, co-founder, Richer Poorer. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask see if there's any final parting thoughts for our audience from any one of you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Any final parting thoughts for our audience?
Parting thoughts for the audience. I think, everything we're doing up here is, we don't have the answers. It's really fucking hard, to be honest with you, what we're doing. And trying to, we're, I think, collectively sharing information, and what's working and what's not is ultimately it's what's going to benefit, smaller brands and compete against, fast fashion and some of these bigger brands. And I'm a true believer in a rising tide lifts all boats, but in order to do that, there needs to be information sharing of successes and failures. So I encourage, everybody on this panel, as well as everybody here, that ask the hard questions, and be open and transparent about what's working and what's not. And I think it will ultimately benefit the industry as a whole.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, Jess, go ahead.
I think, just in general, I believe that technology is not an option anymore, and I think everyone on this panel will say the same thing. Technology's role is to essentially make someone superhuman, and so all the way from the design element, Backbone is trying to make a designer superhuman. We're trying to make a production team superhuman. We're trying to make the retail stores superhuman or wholesale superhuman, and so really, adopting technology is not an option. You have to do it to stay competitive today. And so, just be aware, I guess, of what the options are and implement, because the return on investment is going to be very, very apparent, I believe.
And that's great input. And I'd like to end on embracing change. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, it's so important. That's why. Let me reconnect here. I'll just hold it. Embracing change. As cliche as it sounds, it's so important. Technology is definitely our friend. Lines of code they're never going to replace humans, especially in this process. There's so much tactile sort of components to, running a brand, creating products, but there's a lot of things that you can automate. There's data, there's analytics that you can utilize that can help, I would say, improve on those arbitrary decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis, whether you're a merchant, a production person, a designer. There's things where you just have that gut feeling, but it's great to be able to look at the analytics and see if that truly backs it up. Is Navy selling? Does wool do well here? Things like that. And a slew of other, really interesting key data points that you can get out of technology. So that's end on that.
Thank you very much. Well, it seems that we do have a lot of resources and services out there that are there to continue to provide a very powerful source of information, especially if you're just a startup brand, right through to a large established corporation. The point is that the consumers are ever changing, and we're, as businesses, always want to continue to strive to understand what our consumer is thinking and learn as much as we possibly can about them and improve different ways about our business. Everything from design to production, manufacturing, and getting a closer look at who our customer is and their ever-evolving needs. And our panelists here explained about their businesses and services and how they can help address some of your concerns or ambitions regarding your business. So if you want to get a hold of them and ask more questions, again, these are their names up here with their information. Feel free to contact them. And thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure to get to know you and your services. Thank you.